If you're only celebrating the big wins in your business, like hitting a revenue goal or landing a big client, then you're missing out on the real power of progress. What if the most important milestones in your business aren't the ones that are measured in dollars, but the ones that are measured in discipline? That's what I want to talk about this week's episode. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. Okay, so in the spirit of celebrating intentional wins, I have a big milestone that I would like to celebrate with you guys this week. Actually, it's two milestones. This week marks the 100th edition of the TSA Weekly newsletter, which is almost unfathomable to me because, well, I'll explain that in a minute. The second one is that this is the 30th episode of the TSA Weekly podcast. Both of these are huge wins for me, and I'm going to explain why and how I got here and all of that. But I want to know if you've been around with me since the beginning. So if you've been around since the beginning of the newsletter, drop the word newsletter in the comments. And if you've been around since the beginning of the podcast, drop podcast in the comment. And if you're brand new or this is like the first episode you're seeing, welcome. Thank you for being here. But there's a special, special place in my heart for those of you who have been around and stuck with me since the beginning. So please let me know in the comments. But why are these milestones important for me to celebrate? Well, honestly, because these are achievements that were 100% under my control. Most of the things that we set goals for in our business are kind of results-based. They're outcomes, which means that they rely on somebody else taking action. And these are very important things for us to measure and track and shoot for in our business, right? Because these are the things that make our business a business. These are the things that let our business continue to grow and earn income, but they aren't things that we control completely. Yes, there is an aspect of it that you control. You need to show up in order for people to be able to take action. But we tend to focus on the second part of that, and we forget the importance of celebrating the first part, which is the you showing up, right? So that's why I'm celebrating these milestones. But as a result, I have noticed that because I've been focusing more on just my part of the equation, just me showing up, I am blowing past my results-based KPIs as well, which is kind of awesome. And if you don't know what KPIs are, or you just need a refresher, KPIs are key performance indicators. And these are the things like the little targets that we set that we measure along the way as we're working towards a bigger goal. And the reason that we do this in business, we typically kind of measure these things in quarters. And we do that because it allows us to see early on if we're heading in the right direction, if we are on track to reach those annual goals. Because if you wait until the end of the year to stop and look and see, okay, did I achieve my goals? Well, if you didn't, you can't do anything about it. But if you are reviewing these KPIs along the way, then you have an opportunity to say, hey, I'm trending in the wrong direction here. I'm going to change what I'm doing so that I have a better shot of hitting that goal. I have a video here on the channel showing how I'm using Trello to track my KPIs because duh. So if you haven't checked that out yet, or if you're not tracking your KPIs yet and you want to start, well, I'll make sure to link that above so you can go check it out because it's a super simple way to start figuring out, number one, what your KPIs should be, but then also tracking them in Trello. But why is this such a big deal for me? I mean, there were a lot of different discipline-based things, milestones that I could be tracking or celebrating. But I chose this one because consistency with content creation is something that I have struggled with for a very long time. My first business, if you haven't been around long enough to have heard me talk about it before, I was a voice teacher. And that was a long time ago, and it was all kind of in person, word of mouth. I didn't do a lot of online marketing. I did do a little bit of email marketing, but it was more like just automated emails for, I don't know, staying in touch with my students and, reminding them of appointments and things like that. It wasn't truly email marketing as I understand it now. I didn't even start thinking about going in that direction until like maybe 2019 when I started thinking about shifting my voice lessons more into the online space. I ultimately decided not to, and I switched over into the business world, which I'm honestly a little bit, I don't want to say regret because I don't regret shifting my focus. I love what I'm doing now. But there's a part of me that wishes that I had moved into the YouTube space when I was still doing voice lessons, because I see all of the voice teachers and piano teachers and all of that here on YouTube having so much fun doing those reaction videos, especially the pentatonics ones. I am maybe a little obsessed. I love watching other people experience something for the first time, especially if it's something that I love, which is probably why I love teaching about Trello. I never really put those two together, but yeah, I bet that is why. But if I was still doing voice lessons, I would absolutely have one of those reaction channels, because so much fun what that they're having. But when I shifted into the business space, I didn't really know where to go with that. And my first thought, especially at that time, which was like 2019, 2020, I hadn't really thought about the idea of doing YouTube or even podcasting at the time. At that moment, I saw people blogging. And it seemed to me like, oh, well, that should be pretty simple, right? I just write a quick little blog and send it out in an email. And here's the problem with that for me specifically: writing is not my primary medium. And so, what I found for myself, what I was struggling with, was that I would either get caught up in every single blog post needing to be perfect, every single word needing to be so important, or I would just get stuck in the outcomes of, well, are people actually going to my blog and reading this? Are they commenting? Are they signing up for things? Like, I was so focused on all of that that I was really struggling to be consistent with it, because it takes a lot of effort to write a perfect blog or create a perfect video, which, as you've noticed here, while yes, of course, I edit this to try to make it a little bit less rambly and a little more streamlined and intentional, I still let it be very conversational, because that is what's natural to me. And if I were still focused on perfectionism, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would really struggle to get this content out here, especially on a weekly basis. So, back in the day, before the TSA Weekly newsletter, before all of this stuff, I had a welcome series for what I was trying to do with switching over into the business world. But I literally, in my welcome series, I was trying to set expectations for new subscribers, right? As far as like how often they were going to get emails from me, when new content would come out and all of that, just, so they would know what to expect. And I literally said something like, I blog when I feel like it, or I blog when I'm inspired, or something completely non-committal and, in hindsight, absolutely ridiculous. All I was doing was telling potential customers that you can't rely on me. You can't trust me. I am not always going to show up for you. And those are all things that are not at all who I want to be as a business owner or as a human. So it was a really, really big struggle to me to find a way to be consistent, because I knew it was so important, but I didn't know how to get there. So what changed? This may be a little confusing, because this may sound to you like someone that's a little flaky and maybe how you feel sometimes. And how is this person celebrating milestones like 100 weekly newsletters and 30 weekly episodes of a podcast? Well, that's because something major shifted for me a couple of years ago when I read the book Atomic Habits. If you haven't read it yet, no judgment, because I was kind of late to the party for Atomic Habits as well, but don't let any more time go by. Read the book. I'm going to put a link in the description for the book, because whether you get a hard copy, which I actually kind of recommend on this one, or you listen to the audiobook, or you get the ebook, or whatever format you are actually going to act on right now, do it, because it has probably been the most impactful book for my business, for my life, actually. And then another book that I read about a year or so later was The 1% Rule by Tommy Baker. So I'm going to be talking about some concepts that are reflected kind of in both books, but I'm going to be quoting different ones depending on which one kind of resonated with me, just in the way that the author said that concept. So the first one was from Atomic Habits, and it's all about helping me understand the idea of identity-based habits. So I was always aware of the idea of trying to build habits and, set specific goals for, I'm going to do this every single day or once a week or whatever the frequency, whatever the goal was. But the idea of focusing on not just the task at hand of what I was going to do, but of who I wanted to be. So, what James Clear said was every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. This was kind of, I don't want to say mind blowing, but it was definitely eye opening for me. It helped me to stop focusing on the results of me trying to build this habit, even though that was all within my control. Instead of focusing on the results, I instead focused on proving to myself that I was the type of person that I wanted to be. So, like I said a minute ago, with that crazy sentence in my welcome email before, where I basically told potential customers that I was unreliable, I knew that wasn't who I wanted to be. I wanted to be someone that they could rely on, that they knew would show up for them. So, by focusing on building the habit of consistency on who I wanted to become, that reliable, consistent person, it made it so much easier for me to start building up that habit of consistency. And as a result of that, writing 100 weekly newsletters, it didn't just build my email list, which it did, but it also turned me into a consistent content creator. And filming and releasing 30 episodes of the podcast so far didn't just grow my audience specifically here on YouTube, which it did, but it also allowed me to feel like and become a YouTuber, become a podcaster. Even though I was already doing tutorials here on YouTube and had been consistently for over a year, I didn't really start feeling like a YouTuber until the podcast. I was starting to a little bit, but the podcast really kind of just solidified that for me. So while, yes, I was getting awesome results from it, it was more about my identity and me stepping into being the person that I knew I wanted to become. The second thing that both of these books did for me is to help me understand and harness the power of micro improvements, which might seem obvious, right? Atomic habits, atoms are very, very small. And the 1% rule, we're not talking about the 50% rule. We're not talking about leaps and bounds in improvement. Those happen over time, they're cumulative, but we're focused on those tiny little improvements, those micro habits, right? And it makes all the difference for me. So the quote for this one is going to come actually from Tommy Baker. And he said, the gap between where you are and where you want to be is smaller than you think. It's just on the other side of consistent, deliberate action. So, what this quote and this new perspective actually did for me, it took the overwhelm of trying to think about doing 52 consecutive weeks of anything, if I'm honest, and turned it into just focusing on this week. Now, does this mean that I don't ever plan ahead or think ahead about what I'm going to do in future weeks? No, of course not. I have my Trello board. I've shared videos about it before where I plan ahead. I have my brain dump where when ideas come to me for videos or topics or things like that, of course, I keep track of those. If I have a particular theme that I know I want to talk about at some point, I will kind of plan ahead a little bit. But when it comes to creating the content itself, filming the video, writing the newsletter, editing the podcast, all of that, I don't focus on future weeks. I focus on this week, with one exception. If I am planning solopreneur PTO and I'm going to give myself some actual time off, then yes, I will batch create a little bit in advance. The other mindset shift that came from this was that, milestones aren't just about the achievement. They're about the process. They're about the journey. They're about finding a way to love and enjoy creating the content versus before when I was trying to put out blogs. I was dreading it. I wasn't enjoying it at all. I was so stressed out trying to come up with topics. I never felt like I knew what to talk about because I always felt like that format, that medium was not a natural way for me to talk, right? And so it didn't flow out of me the way that talking to you here on YouTube or on the podcast does. So figuring out my unique process, which includes, what format I'm going to be doing my content in, was a big part of that. It helped me to start to love the process. And so because of that, these milestones kind of snuck up on me. A couple weeks ago, I was writing an email and all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, it is the 98th edition of the newsletter. The 100th edition is coming up. I should probably do something special for that. So it snuck up on me. It wasn't something that I was struggling to get to. It almost blew past me. that is what happens when you focus on the process and really just creating something that you love and that feels balanced for you. And then the last thing that came out of all of this for me was something that I talk about here a lot on the channel, on the podcast, in the newsletter, everywhere: goals and systems. So, one of my favorite quotes from Atomic Habits, but maybe one of my favorite, like, kind of business personal development quotes of all time, is from James Clear. And it is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." I've absolutely used this before, I think even on the podcast. This is one of those quotes where if I were ever to get a tattoo, which I probably never will. I'm not really a tattoo girl. But if I did, I wouldn't be surprised if I used some like variation or version of this quote, because it has been so impactful for me in all areas of my life. Regardless of what my goal is, I have now come to the point where it is second nature for me to realize that I need to have a workable system in order to achieve the goal. This is how I ended up with my workout system. This is how I have my systems for my business that allows me to be more consistent. And this is the approach that I always know I need to apply when a new goal comes up in my life or my business or whatever that might be. And when I say systems, I'm not actually talking about the tools. Yes, I use Trello, I use Canva, I use Kit, I use Descript. I use all of these tools as a part of my system to automate things and make things even more efficient. But when I'm talking about systems, I really mean more routines. And this is what James is talking about too. He's not really talking about tools. In fact, I don't think he ever really mentions specific tools except for his own app. It's really just about having a routine and knowing what your process is. And if you do not have a solid system, you will not achieve your goals. You're not going to suddenly rise to the level of where your goals are. You're going to fall to wherever your systems are taking you, or you're going to rise to where your systems are taking you, which is where I've gotten to at this point, which makes my life so much easier. That being said, these milestones happened to fall for me like right around the end of Q1, which is a time that I set aside to review my KPIs and look at where I'm trending in things, whether or not I'm heading in the direction that I need to be in order to achieve my goals for the year. And most of my KPIs are results based: sales, subscriber count, watch hours, things like that. But I always make sure that at least a couple of my goals are discipline based. They're the things that we're talking about here. Did I post consistently? Did I email consistently? All of that. And what I'm noticing is by including that in my KPIs and reviewing that on a quarterly basis, not only am I getting to experience that feeling of, yes, I'm showing up for myself, I am showing up for my audience, for my clients, I'm getting to see the direct correlation between when I show up, my discipline KPIs and my results based KPIs. My sales go up, my subscribers go up, my email list goes up. All of that goes up when I am consistent. So while I was doing this review of my Q1 KPIs, I started to realize, okay, I have created this level of consistency for myself with the TSA Weekly Podcast. I have shown myself my identity based habit that I am someone that consistently shows up for the podcast. But now I need to stop and think about sustainability. Is this something that I can continue doing every single week of the year? And realistically, can I? Yes. Should I? I don't think so. So I'm going to be taking a short break from the podcast, a few weeks for sure, maybe longer, we'll just see. But I'm going to be taking some time to kind of restructure the podcast into more intentional seasons. And I'm doing this because I want to make sure not only that the podcast stays valuable, I don't want to get to the point where I'm repeating topics too often. And, yes, there are going to be repetitive things that come up because, well, they come up repeatedly in business, but I want to make sure that this stays really intentional. But also because I want to avoid burnout. I want to be realistic. And this brings up something I want to address just really quick when it comes to habit building and building routine and being consistent. So, something that I have noticed in myself, and maybe you run into the same kind of thing, maybe you don't, but there is kind of a dark side of habit building. And I'm not sure I've ever really talked about it here before. But it came up for me as I was looking at this and, was making me think about, okay, the app Duolingo, where you go in there and you're learning a language and it's very gamified and all of that. Duolingo is one of those habits that showed me that I sometimes have an addictive personality when it comes to habits. One of the most important things about habit building isn't actually that you keep doing it forever and ever and ever. It's that you stay intentional about it, that you consistently come back and review the habits in your life and in your business to see, are they still necessary? Are they still serving you? Or are you still doing it out of some sort of addiction to the habit? Or are you doing it because of an obligation, because it's just what you do? Is it becoming just so routine that it's no longer impactful? Like, there are a lot of things that can be on this like dark side of habit building that I don't think we've talked about before. So I wanted to make sure to bring that up here because when it came to Duolingo, like I was a little obsessed and I was not even just obsessed like on the competitive side because I'm a very competition motivated person. And so I was always like wanting to stay at the top of my leaderboard and all this stuff. It was very important for me to cold turkey shut that off. And so I did because I realized at that point that me sticking with that habit was no longer about learning Spanish, which was the language I was working on at the time. It was no longer about improving myself and learning Spanish. It was now about staying on the top of the leaderboard. Well, that is not a beneficial habit for me anymore. That is not something that is helping me be a better version of myself. That is actually creating something that is taking time away from things that are honestly just more important for me right now. It's important for us to look at the habits that we build in our business, especially, and review them on a regular basis to say, is this still something that is a beneficial part of my routine? Is this still someone that I want to be? And is this still a way that I want to be spending my time? I absolutely want to be spending my time on the podcast. It's definitely beneficial for me and it's beneficial for the business. But I now need to look at it and say, okay, now how can I make it sustainable and not just post weekly because I said I was going to post weekly, but do it with intention. So that is why I'm going to be taking a little break, figure out some seasons, come back with more intentionality. I'm not really planning on changing the format of the episodes themselves, but if you have thoughts and feedback on the format of the podcast, let me know in the comments because I don't know, maybe I will make some shifts there as well based on your feedback. I will still be doing the newsletter every week. So if you are not subscribed to the newsletter yet, there's going to be a link in the description. Go make sure that you sign up for that so that you're still connected with the TSA Weekly and you're connected with me during this hiatus. And I will still be doing my Friday tutorials here on YouTube. So I'm not taking a break from YouTube altogether. I'm just taking a little break from the podcast. Make sure if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't rung that notification bell, do it now so that when I come back, you don't miss it. Not to mention during the break, I'm planning on doing a couple of live events here on YouTube. I don't know exactly what yet. I'm kind of noodling that out a little bit, but I can say that one of the live events I plan on bringing back at least a couple of times is Tech Savvy Study Hall. If you don't know what that is yet, I will post a link to that playlist up above so you can go check it out. I've done a couple of live events of that here. It's basically a co-working session where you can kind of set aside time, set an appointment to work on particular tasks on your own. It's not collaborative, but it's one of those things where it's fantastic for helping you stay really, really super focused for an hour. So I will be doing some of that during the break, so make sure that you keep your eyes peeled for that. At the end of the podcast episodes, I always ask you a question. So here's the question I want to ask you this week. What milestone have you hit recently that wasn't about results, but was about your effort? Let's celebrate that together in the comments. I hope you liked that video, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with a fellow solopreneur. And make sure you check out the description for links to how we can connect and maybe even work together.